Before we start today's review, I've just got one question for you. You're not afraid of the dark, are you? Today we discuss the film that jump-started Vin Diesel's career as we discuss Pitch Black. So the movie starts off, there's this ship in deep space, everyone's in cryo sleep, and we get a voiceover from Vin Diesel who's playing his favorite character of Richard B. Riddick, escaped convict. There's all kinds of people on the ship, ranging from prospectors to mercs to holy men to escaped convicts. So they're all just traveling across the galaxy. So the ship's hit by this meteor shower and it goes down. The captain ends up getting killed, and so does like the first mate. And they end up on this crash landing on this planet. And scene by scene, they slowly find out that they're not alone on this planet. Everybody's scared of Riddick because of what he is and who he is. He's in restraints. He's got a bit in his mouth, so he can't talk people into doing things. And pretty soon they find out there's worse things out there than him. There's this really cool scene where the character of Zeke, one of the prospectors, disappears while they're out looking for water. And they all think Riddick did it because they saw him standing over the site, seeing what was going on. So they restrain Riddick and they send Fry, the captain of the ship. I don't know why you would send your one pilot down to look at this, but they did. And they send Fry down this hole to look for Zeke, who she finds remains of, and she almost gets killed by these things. What we find out later, in the Pitch Black lore, called bioraptors, which are really cool. They're kind of like a cross between a hammerhead shark and an alien from Aliens, but they can fly. And I like the way the film gives you little pieces of information just as you need it. They find out that these settlers were here and that they've disappeared. There's no traces of life whatsoever on this planet. There's giant bones. And they suddenly find out that there's the cycle where the stars and the planets align, and every 22 years there's a solar eclipse. And this just happens to fall on the 22nd year when they crash land on this planet. Uh, Not good for them. So basically, the last third of the movie, these creatures have descended upon them out of the darkness, and they're taking them out one by one. And so they've let Riddick go, and they're trying to get these power cells from the wreck back to this encampment where there's like a small shuttle for just a few people, and they have to get like 4 or 5 power cells to them. And so they're going through this canyon that's just full of these bioraptors, and that's really where the movie takes off and gets really good. So that's it basically for the main plot. I want to get into what I like about this movie. There's like a three-headed lead in this movie because David Twohy, who directed it, didn't want like this big action star. As a matter of fact, the studio demanded that he use Steven Seagal, which is a little known fact about this. And David Twohy's just like, no, knowing just how hard Steven Seagal is to work with. And I like Hard to Kill and Under Siege and those movies, but yeah, Steven Seagal as Richard B. Riddick, just that wouldn't have worked. Um, but instead, we get Rhada Mitchell as Carolyn Fry. She's one of the leads. Vin Diesel as Richard B. Riddick. We get Cole Hauser as Johns, who would later, go on to great fame in Yellowstone. And I really liked Hauser and Mitchell, the two who it took a while to get fame. And I always wondered why they weren't bigger deals. And Rhada Mitchell, I think she went on to do Man on Fire and Resident Evil, the movie. She never did get huge like Cole Hauser did. But I just love the dynamics, and these characters all change from how they started. Richard B. Riddick is a convict who kind of has a redemption story. He saves a couple people by the end of this. Cole Hauser, you think his character of Johns is this police officer, but he's really just a merc transporting Riddick to the next slam and catching a payday. And he's just not a very good guy. He's a morphine junkie. The character of Fry, you find out early in the movie, when she's trying to get the nose of the plane down and land it, she almost jettisoned everybody but herself. and that's a really interesting dynamic, and that comes into play later when they're having trust issues amongst everybody in the group. But I really like that. I loved how they went with just normal actors who nobody they weren't household names at the time, and even the supporting cast. They filmed in Australia during the Australian winter, and it's supposed to be a planet with three suns, where it's just like terribly hot, and it was actually like 40 to 50 degrees, so they had to spritz water on them. But the supporting cast, I really like them as well. They're mostly Australian actors and actresses. There's one actress I can't think of her name right off the top of my head. She's one of the prospectors. She is really good in this. There's an actor named Paris who's the antiquities dealer. I like him. He's really cool. And the character Jack is okay. I like the twist of that character, and I will admit the first time I saw the movie, I didn't catch it, but now it's just like painfully obvious out there in front of everybody that what that character really is. There's some really cool scenes in this movie as well. Um, some really good visuals. The scene where the total eclipse is happening, and there's that planet that's orbiting them, and it's got rings kind of like Saturn, and it's coming into their orbit, and everything's slowly darkening. That's a really cool scene. One of my favorites in the movie. I like the opening crash sequence as well. That's how you start a movie. They show the Hunter Gratzner, it's the name of the ship, and it's coming in, and there's the meteor shower and everything, and Fry's trying to get the nose down on the thing, and the ship's falling apart, and that was really good, really intense. This movie has a really interesting visual style. David Toohey like sent the negative off to get this bath to where it silvered the negative. You've got a planet with three suns, so that's going to throw off this atmospheric glow, and that's really cool. The character of Richard B. Riddick has had this surgical shine job done on his eyes, so he could see who's sneaking up on him in the dark in prison. And so he wears these goggles most of the time, but when he takes them off and you see through Riddick's eyes, that's a really cool visual effect as well. And then you got the visual effect of the actual bioraptors when they're after people, and you see them. So David Toohey had a lot on his plate as far visually for this movie, and a friend of mine says it dates the movie pretty bad to like 2000s. But I watched this again last night just in preparation for this, and I didn't think it was as bad as what he let on anyway. But yeah, I really like the visual style to this. So I remember seeing the trailer to this thing back in 2000, probably when I was watching like Monday Night Raw or something, and I remember thinking, man, that looks really cool. And I remember the scene with Paris where he's out surrounded, by the bioraptors, and he drinks the alcohol and takes his lighter and one last round of fire before they kill him. Um, that was really cool. There's actually a fan theory out there that Riddick might have set him up. You see him, Paris, that is, crawling on his hands and knees after a bottle or a light. I can't remember exactly what it was. And you see Riddick with a knife, and then a couple of flashes later, you hear the cut, and you see his back, and you just assume it was a bioraptor, but these things smell blood, and after they get done with Paris, Riddick's just sitting back and watching him, kind of like he was trying to get these things off their tail. And I don't know if I buy into that or not, but that's a real interesting theory. I don't know if you guys have heard that. Let me know in the comments what you think about that. But anyway, so yeah, I remember seeing that trailer and that part with the character of Paris. And I remember telling my buddies at work at the time, I was like 20 when this came out. I was like, man, I really want to see that movie. And unfortunately, it didn't come to our area, but I was engaged at that time. And it was funny. This movie kind of sticks with me because from the time it came out to the time it came out on home video, I got married in between there. And this movie was one of the first ones me and my wife ever rented in our new place. So it kind of holds a special place for me there. And this movie went on to spawn two other sequels, a couple of video games. I think there's a cartoon or two. I've not seen the cartoons or played the games. Chronicles of Riddick, it is what it is. A lot of people hate it. I don't hate it. Vin Diesel was a big deal after Fast and Furious. This launched him to that. And they had to make their money back. I can't fault them for that, but it wasn't as dark as this, and people don't like it for that. The movie Riddick, which came out in 2013, It's a little more back to basics, but still not as good as this one. I really like how Vin Diesel loves this character, and he only did the cameo in Fast and Furious 6 if Universal would sign over the rights of the character of Riddick to him for a certain amount of time so he could get Riddick, the second sequel, financed. Vin Diesel just seems like a cool dude. Like anybody who would do that and anybody who would forfeit their pay for that movie to get that movie made, my hat's off to you, sir. But judging it apart from its sequels and on its own, to me, Pitch Black is a modern sci-fi horror classic. In the vein of Alien, it's not near as good as Alien, but I love it. And honestly, I can say this is easily in my top 10 of this millennium. You know, it's 2023. As far as sci-fi horror goes, this might be my top one for the past 23 years. I don't know what would be close to it. The similar in style, maybe Pandorum, which isn't all that good. District 9, I liked quite a bit. I might review it one day here. Um, but yeah, I would definitely consider Pitch Black a modern classic. It feels weird calling a 20-year-old movie a classic, but to me it is. I really enjoy this movie a lot. If I'm going to give it a rating, I'm going to go 8.3. I think Bullet Train I gave an 8.2 to last year. It was like my favorite movie that year. Pitch Black was probably my favorite movie from the year 2000, and I like it a little bit more than Bullet Train. So yeah, 8.3. So that wraps this one up, guys. Got a lot of cool things on the way, a lot more videos coming as the year rolls along. And as always, thanks for watching. This is Drew, and I'll see you down the line.